Hi, and welcome to level 4 of this Goodfoot quest on managing your people's performance. And here we get into the nub of it. The question is, well, what if people don't perform? In levels 2 and 3, we've looked at setting objectives, giving a clear indication of what's expected, setting team objectives to bind people together and give you some pressure to help the performance pressure because the team is all committed together. But life happens, of course, and sometimes people don't perform. So what should we do about that? Here's the important start, of course. We've got to get things right at the start. So suggestion to minimize this risk of people going off track is to get it crystal clear at the start with them. This is what you need to do. This is why you need to do it. Do make sure we cover box number 2. It might be obvious to you, and you might assume it's obvious to them, but it may not be. So say it anyway. This is how much you need to do. This is your scope, what is included, what is not included. This is when you need to do it, the time scales of the deliverables, the checkpoints, who else is involved, and where you need to be to do it, your location to do it. So it's probably worth writing these things down in an email and doing a quick summary mail. Do we understand that this is the remit, this is the task? But at least the person then says in their own mind, look, I'm crystal clear about what I'm doing on this assignment or this part of the project or this set of tasks. But don't stop there. We are given a very clear remit, but these are two very, very powerful questions that we then begin to ask within that conversation. How do you think we should measure progress? And this is what you say to the other person. You ask them, how do you think we should measure progress? Rather than you saying, right, I'm going to call you once a week and we'll see how it's going, give them that problem to solve, because in them thinking about it, they will begin to own it. So they may say to you something crazy. They may say, look, phone me once a month. And you'll say, look, that's not good enough. I need to know weekly what's going on. So we're going to meet once a week by teams. But at least they've started to think about it. And you'll start to say, I'm going to measure you. That's what you're actually saying. I'm going to measure you. So come back to me with suggestions about how we do it. And that's setting a flag in the brain. This kind of person I need to work for because they're going to measure me. And the second question is very, very powerful. What do you think we should do if you're late? Because you're likely to be late. You're likely to get overloaded with work. So what are we going to do? And again, ask the question. Let the person own the problem, because you're flagging, if you're late, we're going to do something. They now know that, and they're now figuring, well, he's going to measure me, she's going to measure me, they're going to check me if I'm late. I think if I'm not going to do work for somebody, it's not going to be this person, right? Because they're on it. So if you bring these two questions in a nice, professional, friendly way, you'll get buy-in to actually delivering for you. The most powerful word you can use and need to remind people of at the outset and during the progress checking is consequences. This is what's going to happen if we don't achieve. And these consequences are critical to make clear the consequences on the organization, on the business, on the team, because you will use those later on when people aren't performing. You'll say to them, we allocated the work, we discussed the consequences, and you seem to be not delivering. So we now need to invoke those consequences. That's what's going to start to happen. Now, it might be a whole range of consequences. It could be, the worst case is disciplinary action, but you can have other consequences too, which are great to talk about, such as the other team won't cooperate with us if we don't deliver, or the client is getting unhappy. These are consequences too, which are very, very powerful. So we set it off to go in the right place, but then of course, right at the start is in the right place. We've indicated how to go. And then we hit the situation where people don't perform. What do we do? Well, lack of performance is either down to skill or will. And we deal differently with both of those. Skill, it could be a self-organization problem, a skilling problem, that they haven't got the tools to do the job, they haven't got the ability to do the job, or they can't manage their time and priorities. That's skill issues. Will issues are different. This is to do with our attitude. Now, of course, you can probably guess what you do is somebody in box number 3. They're a star, right? They're totally committed to you and they're really good at the job. You've probably seen people in box number 9, totally committed, but not that competent yet. So, of course, you train them up. You probably met people in box number 1, very skillful, but don't want to be there. So what do we do with those? We'll talk about those in a second. The question, though, of course, is, well, what box are they actually in? And here's the way to find out. To find out what box they're in, offer support, and you'll find your answer. So when somebody's not delivering, you might say to them, you've not delivered on Friday last week. We're now into the following week. Would you like Wendy to help you? Or how about if you come into the office on Thursday and we'll work on it together? You offering support. Now, with somebody with a good will immediately say yes. If it's a skill problem, in other words, they will say yes. They will say, yeah, that'll be great. Wendy could be really helpful. Or, yeah, I'll come in on Wednesday and we'll work through it. Thursday, we'll work through it. You found out it's a skill problem. That's fine. We can deal with that. If you get a negative response to support offer, you've got a will problem. You've got an attitude problem. So if they said, no, Wendy's no good. I don't get on very well with Wendy. Or if they said, no, I'd prefer to work at home on Thursday. You found out they got a will problem, and dealing with that is completely different than dealing with a skill problem. So let's take a look at that. So in box 3, as you can see there, you've got box 3, 6, and 9, you've got a very high will level. And with these people, it's really good to encourage and delegate them. Very, very good. They're high will level. They really want to be skilled up. If they may be highly skilled, if not, they can be trained. Box number 2, maybe reward them a bit. They're very good, but their will isn't quite there. So maybe a reward of some sort, acknowledgement, might help. Sure, it could be money, but it also could be reputation. It could be introducing them to somebody, recommending them, making them feel good. Box number 5, well, probably a bit of training and a bit of reward. You might rescue them, but you definitely can't rescue boxes 1, 4, 7, and 8. Their will and the skill level may be high, but if their will is that negative in 1, 4, and 7, move them on. Or point this out to them. Unless they change their will, their attitude, you are going to move them on. Number 8, probably move them on because they haven't got high skill anyway. What is very powerful is actually drawing this out and saying to the person, what box do you think you're in? Let's talk about it honestly and objectively, and then we'll make the appropriate decisions. And finally, the appropriate decision could result in the bottom right there. We have to be clear on that, unafraid of it, and very clear to all of our team that we're prepared to go all the way if we have to. We don't want to, but if we have to. And all the way is disciplinary process, HR, verbal written warnings, you're not performing, end of story. We hope never to get there, but of course it sometimes happens. We have to be unafraid to get there, because if we are afraid to get there, we will delay. And if we delay, the problem will go on and on and on. So frequent feedback to start with, 80-20 rule. This is 80% of them talking, 20% of you talking. How can I help will be a question very often, and the person performing well will tell you and be clear about that. It'll all be great, but we move along and then we get a drop on that purple line in performance. Performance is falling off. What do we do? Have an expectations conversation. Talk about your personal standards first. Look, this is my expectations of you. We've had those expectations. You can expect this. You cannot expect that. That's the expectations discussion, as you can see from the words in the bottom left. If it still doesn't work, you need the skill will discussion. What box are you in? I think it's a will problem, maybe. If it's a skill problem, you'll recover straight away with training and experience. If it's a will problem, right, I'm going to give you specific objectives for work, team, and personal. I'm going to change the objectives now because performance is not happening. And we hope that it will go back on track. If it doesn't, this is where it's headed. Keep notes and evidence all the way of these conversations, because you want evidence that you have had these conversations, because you're managing their performance and you don't want to hit difficulties later on. So there's some thoughts about what to do to allocate, chase, and ensure work is done, and to deal with people maybe who have a will problem. That's the disciplinary route eventually. and maybe move them up into better will and higher skill, that would be great. And some thoughts on having in mind the journey that you're going to go through with them for allocating work, chasing work, and if necessary, going to the ultimate of ensuring that the person unfortunately can't be part of the team because of their performance. We hope, and indeed for most, they can be, because you will recover it and you will get good performance from them.